I stood at the altar in my white dress, surrounded by 1,000 strangers who had come to witness what should have been the happiest moment of my life. Instead, I watched my new mother-in-law ruin it with a champagne glass in her hand and a smile cold enough to freeze fire. My name is Jessica, and I learned the hard way that some people wait until you're at your highest point just to push you down. To the happy couple, Laura said, her voice smooth but sharp like a knife hidden in silk. Though I must admit, when Jack first told me about the sweet little florist he met in that tiny town, I thought it was just another one of his charity cases. A wave of awkward laughter spread across the room. Jack's grip on my hand tightened, but as always, he said nothing when it came to his mother. But here we are, she continued, swirling her champagne. A true example that love knows no social boundaries. Though, I do wonder if Jack understands that running a multi-million-dollar tech company takes more than just a pretty wife arranging flowers at home. Kathleen, my best friend, shifted in her bridesmaid dress beside me. I didn't need to look at her to know she was furious. At our table, my mom's face burned red with anger, and my dad's hands were clenched around his napkin. Laura raised her glass higher, her diamond bracelet catching the light. To Jessica, may you eventually prove yourself worthy of the Kemberton name, though I suppose that's as likely as finding Cartier in a dollar store. Silence filled the room. 1,000 people waiting to see if the bride would break. I didn't. Instead, I smiled at Laura, lifted my own glass, and took a slow sip. The champagne burned like acid. Thank you for those kind words, I said, keeping my voice steady even though my chest was tight. It's touching to see how much you care about Jack's happiness. Laura's perfect smile twitched. She hadn't expected me to respond. Suddenly, Adam, Jack's father, stood up. I'd like to make a toast as well, he said, his voice warm and full of kindness. To Jessica, who brings more grace, kindness, and honesty to this family than we probably deserve. Laura's face darkened. She had divorced Adam 4 years ago, and his support for me only gave her more reason to sharpen her claws. The rest of the reception passed in a blur. Faces I barely recognized, forced smiles, and a knot of anger tightening in my stomach. I danced with Jack, who kept whispering apologies in my ear. But his words meant nothing because they changed nothing. I hugged my parents, who tried to hide their worries behind proud smiles. I cut the cake, posed for photos, and played the part of the happy bride. Meanwhile, Laura sat with her fancy friends, acting like she owned a room, throwing smug looks my way. It wasn't until later, in the quiet hotel bathroom, that Kathleen found me staring at my reflection. We should poison her tea, she said, only half joking. That would be too easy, I replied, surprised at how cold my own voice sounded. She wouldn't learn anything from that. Kathleen watched me in the mirror. What are you thinking? I reached for the pearl necklace Laura had given me that morning, a so-called family heirloom. She was probably lying. Still, as I touched it, something inside me shifted. I felt myself harden, like soft sap turning into solid amber. She's right about one thing, I said. Social status doesn't matter anymore. And being worthy of the Kemberton name? That doesn't matter either. But she's wrong about everything else. And I'm going to prove it. Kathleen's voice held a hint of warning. Jessica, don't worry, I said with a smile, but this smile felt different than any I had worn before. I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm just going to give Laura exactly what she wants, a daughter-in-law who learns how to play her game. And then I'm going to play it better than she ever has. The music from the reception drifted through the walls, but it felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. In a way, it did. Because the Jessica who walked down the aisle this morning had died somewhere between Laura's first toast and her last smirk. And I had a feeling Laura would soon wish she had left her buried. The honeymoon lasted exactly 4 days before Laura made her first move. I was arranging peonies in our new kitchen when Jack's phone buzzed. A message from her. She had booked a private dinner for us at LeBlanc, the most exclusive restaurant in Kemberton. We should go, Jack said, tapping his fingers against the marble counter. She's trying, Jessica. In her own way. I cut through a flower stem harder than I needed to. Like she tried at the wedding? The silence that followed was heavy with everything he wouldn't say. I watched him adjust his tie, a nervous habit he had picked up from his father. I wondered if he realized how much he looked like Adam when he was uncomfortable. LeBlanc was all glass, candles, and whispered conversations. The kind of place where Kemberton's elite made quiet deals over expensive wine. Laura sat like a queen, commanding the room without even trying. Her dress probably cost more than my parents' monthly mortgage. "Darling," she cooed, air-kissing Jack's cheeks before turning to me. Then, with a slow, judgmental glance at my dress, she smiled. "Jessica," she said, "that's a creative choice of outfit for LeBlanc." I smiled as I smoothed out my floral dress, the one I had picked on purpose.
"Thank you," I said.
I thought about wearing something fancier, but then I remembered what you said about social boundaries not mattering anymore. Laura's eyes narrowed slightly, but before she could reply, Adam appeared behind her chair. "Hope you don't mind me joining," he said, pulling up a seat. I was in the neighborhood. Laura's perfectly polished nails tightened around her wine glass. "Adam, what a surprise," she said, her voice smooth but sharp. "I wasn't aware you still dined at Blanc after the incident." "Oh, they've forgiven me for that little scene you caused during the divorce," he replied easily. Amazing what telling the truth can do for one's reputation. I watched them like a tennis match, noting how Laura's jaw tensed at the word truth. There was history here, buried under years of polite cruelty. "Speaking of reputations," Laura said, turning to me, "I heard something interesting about your flower shop. Apparently, you had some trouble with the health department last year." Jack's head shot up. "Mother." "Oh, that's..." I cut in smoothly. A competitor filed a false complaint. It was cleared up quickly. Though the timing was interesting, right after I started dating Jack, wasn't it? Laura's smile stayed in place, but something shifted in her eyes. Maybe recognition, maybe warning. "How unfortunate," she said lightly. "One must always be careful with these things. Reputation is everything in Kemberton. Don't you agree, Adam?" "Depends on whose version of the truth you're believing," Adam replied, and I noticed how Laura's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine. The rest of dinner was a quiet battle. Every compliment Laura gave had a hidden insult. Every question felt like an accusation. But it was as we were leaving that I saw something that truly changed how I saw her. "Tyler asked about you," Adam said to Laura as we gathered our coats. "He's doing better in rehab this time." For the first time, Laura's perfect mask cracked. "Just for a second. I told you never to mention his name to me," she hissed. "He's still your son."
"He's nothing to me," she snapped.
Then, just as quickly, she smoothed her expression, glancing around to make sure no one had heard. "Jack, darling, don't forget about the charity gala next week," she said sweetly, as if nothing had happened. Then, turning to me, she added, "Jessica, do try to wear something appropriate." As we walked to the car, I caught Adam watching Laura's retreating figure. His face was a mix of pity and something else, maybe disgust. "Who's Tyler?" I asked. Adam turned to me, considering. "Laura's greatest failure," he said finally. "And maybe your greatest advantage, if you're planning what I think you are." I kept my face blank. "I don't know what you mean." He gave me a sad smile. "Yes, you do. Just be careful. Laura didn't become who she is overnight. And if you're not careful, neither will you." That night, as Jack slept beside me in our new bed, I opened my laptop and searched for Tyler. What I found made my breath catch. Newspaper articles about overdoses. Rehab stays. A mother who had publicly disowned her eldest son just to protect her social status. I thought about Laura's shaking hand at dinner, the way she lost control when Tyler's name was mentioned. For the first time, I didn't just see her as my enemy. I saw her as someone who had given up everything, even her own child, just to protect her reputation. And I knew exactly where to strike first. Finding Tyler wasn't hard. The rehab center was on the edge of Kemberton, hidden behind trimmed hedges and quiet security. What surprised me was how easily he agreed to meet. "You're braver than I expected," Tyler said, watching me from across the visitor room table. He had Laura's sharp features, but Adam's kind eyes. Most people in this family like to pretend I don't exist. I'm not most people in this family. He smirked slightly. No, you're the florist who married my brother and made our mother furious. I've been keeping up with the drama from a distance. I placed an envelope on the table. These are from your father, letters Laura hid from you. He's been writing to you for years. Tyler's hands shook as he opened the envelope. The silence stretched as he read, his face getting paler with each page. She told me he never answered my calls, he said, his voice rough. That he gave up on me after the overdose. Laura tells a lot of stories. He looked at me carefully. Why are you showing me this now? I chose my words carefully. Because I need to understand who I'm dealing with. And because you deserve to know the truth. Tyler leaned back, his expression changing.
Ah, I see.
You're looking for something to use against her, aren't you? I admitted. But then I realized hating Laura is just another kind of addiction. He tapped the letters. These change things. Before I could answer, a loud commotion came from the hallway. Then Laura stormed through the door, her usual calm shattered by rage. What do you think you're doing? She hissed at me, then turned to Tyler. And you? How dare you speak to her? Hello, Mother, Tyler said quietly. We were just talking about family history. Wanna join us? Laura's face turned pale as she spotted the letters in his hands. Where did you get those? From your old study, I answered. The false bottom in the desk drawer. Adam told me where to look. You had no right. Like you had no right to keep a father from his son? I stood up, feeling surprisingly calm. Or to tell Jack that Tyler stole from the family trust when it was actually you who… Enough. Laura's voice cracked like a whip. She turned to Tyler. Whatever she's told you, don't believe. Save it, Tyler cut in. For once in your life, just stop lying. Laura straightened, her mask slipping back into place. I have done everything to protect this family's reputation. Everything to make sure Jack didn't end up like you. And now you're both trying to destroy everything I built. No, Mother, Tyler said, shaking his head. You're doing that all on your own. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Is everything all right? We heard raised voices. Tyler didn't look away from Laura. Everything's fine, he said. I picked up my purse. Mrs. Kemberton was just leaving, I said. As I walked past, Laura grabbed my arm, her grip tight. You have no idea what you're starting, she whispered. I met her eyes, without flinching. Actually, I do. I learned from the best. That night, I found Jack in his home office, staring at his phone. Tyler called me, he said, without looking up. First time in 4 years. He told me about the letters, about what Mother did. I waited, my heart pounding. Why didn't you tell me what you were planning? Would you have tried to stop me? He finally looked at me, and I saw the struggle in his eyes. I don't know, he admitted, but I deserve to know the truth about my brother. Like I deserved a mother-in-law who didn't try to ruin my wedding. Jack flinched. Jessica, your mother has been playing this game for decades, Jack. Lying, manipulating, destroying anyone who gets in her way. I'm just learning the rules. He exhaled, rubbing his face. And what happens when you become as good at it as she is? The question hit harder than I expected. I thought about what Tyler had said, how hatred could be just another kind of addiction. My phone buzzed. A message from Adam. Laura's calling an emergency family meeting tomorrow. She's bringing lawyers. I turned the screen toward Jack.
His jaw tightened.
Whatever happens tomorrow, I said, I need to know where you stand. He was silent for a long moment. I stand with the truth, he finally said. Whatever that turns out to be. I nodded and walked away, wondering if he realized that in this family, truth was just another weapon. And I was finally learning how to use it. Laura's lawyers arrived exactly at 10 a.m., their leather briefcases matching the dark wood of Adam's study. There were 4 of them, each with the kind of expression that made it clear they charged by the second. Before anyone spoke, Laura settled into her chair like a queen about to hand down judgment. Before we begin, she said, I want to make it clear that this meeting is about protecting our family's interests. Fascinating choice of words, Adam muttered, pouring himself a drink, despite the early hour. Considering your history with protection, I sat between Jack and Tyler, who had been given a day pass from rehab. The air in the room was thick with tension, unspoken accusations hanging between us all. Laura's lead lawyer opened a folder and slid some papers across the table. "We have evidence," he said, "that certain individuals have accessed private family records without authorization." Under the table, Jack's hand found mine. I kept my face calm, even as my pulse sped up. Additionally, the lawyer continued, there are concerns about potential breaches of confidentiality agreements regarding Tyler's past situations. "You mean my overdoses?" Tyler said flatly. "The ones Mother paid to keep out of the press while telling everyone I was at boarding school?" Laura's lips tightened, but she didn't look at him. "We're trying to prevent further damage to this family's reputation." "No," I heard myself say. "You're not protecting the family. You're protecting yourself." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Kemberton, perhaps we should go over the terms of the proposed agreement." "What agreement?" Jack cut in, his voice sharp. Laura straightened, the hint of victory flashing in her eyes. "A simple arrangement," she said smoothly. "Jessica signs a non-disclosure agreement, agrees to certain social standards, and in return, she receives a generous settlement." I let out a small laugh. "You're trying to buy me off." Laura's expression hardened. "I'm trying to keep order before your little grudge ruins everything I've built." Adam let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Everything you've built? Why don't you tell them about Peter Merkel, Laura? Tell them how you really got the money to start Jack's company." The air in the room seemed to freeze. Laura's face went pale. "That's not relevant," she said quickly. But Adam wasn't finished. "Peter Merkel was my best friend and business partner. He died believing I betrayed him. He never knew that you were the one who set it all up." Jack shot up from his chair. "What are you talking about?" Adam turned to him. "Your mother needed startup money for your tech company. Peter refused to invest unless I was involved. So Laura made sure that never happened. She forged documents, ruined friendships, and made sure you got your success story. All while destroying mine." The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Laura's hand shook slightly as she reached for her water glass. "Everything I did," she whispered, "was for this family." "No," Tyler said coldly. "Everything you did was about control." I watched her carefully, noticing a tiny crack in her mask. And for the first time, I felt something strange, recognition. How many times had I justified my own actions in the same way? The lead lawyer cleared his throat again. "The agreement includes provisions for—" "I don't want your money," I cut him off. "And I don't want to stay silent. I want the truth." Laura's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw real fear in them. "You have no idea what truth costs in our world," she said quietly. I lifted my chin. "Then teach me. Tell them about Tyler's trust fund, about Peter Merkel, about every lie you've told to keep your perfect image." The silence stretched, tight and heavy. Jack looked between me and his mother, torn between the two sides of his life. Laura's voice softened. "If you do this, there's no going back for any of us." I thought about my flower shop in Trinity Village, about the simple life I had before I stepped into this world of power struggles and secrets, about how revenge had started to change me, making my edges as sharp as Laura's. Maybe that was exactly what this family needed. "No more going back," I said. "Only forward." With the truth, Laura stood, straightening her dress, wrapping herself in dignity like armor. "Then you leave me no choice." She gave a small nod to her lawyers. They reached into their briefcases and pulled out a different set of documents. I caught Adam's eye. He gave me a small nod, and I understood this was the moment he had warned me about. The moment when Laura would finally show her true self, not just to me, but to everyone she claimed to protect. The game was changing, and I wasn't sure anymore if winning meant becoming the very thing I had set out to destroy. The Kemberton Country Club's annual charity gala buzzed with whispers as I walked in on Jack's arm. 4 months of careful planning had led to this moment. Across the room, Laura stood in the center of her usual circle, her practiced smile in place. But I noticed how her eyes kept flicking toward the entrance. She was waiting for Tyler. "Are you sure about this?" Jack whispered, his hand tense on my back. I smiled at a passing socialite. Ask your mother that question. Above the stage, a large banner read, "The Peter Merkel Memorial Foundation." I had personally requested it when I joined the event committee. Laura had fought against it, of course. But Adam's influence still carried weight. Jessica, darling, Angela Merkel, Peter's widow, pulled me into a warm embrace. Her voice was just loud enough to make heads turn. I can't thank you enough for suggesting we honor Peter tonight. Laura never mentioned him in past years. The people around Laura shifted uncomfortably. I watched her grip tighten around her champagne glass. Mrs. Merkel, Adam said, stepping beside her. I believe you haven't met my son, Tyler. The room went silent. Tyler stood in the doorway, clean-shaven, wearing a suit that matched his brother's. Laura's perfect story, her troubled, absent son, was standing in front of everyone, proving her lies. Actually, Tyler said, his voice clear, we've met before. At the rehab center Mother donated to right after she had me committed. Against my will. A wave of shocked gasps spread through the room. Laura took a step forward, but Kathleen, working the event as a volunteer server, accidentally on purpose stepped into her path, blocking her with a tray of drinks. Tyler, Laura's voice had that same warning tone I had come to recognize. You're not well. I'm 7 months sober, Mother. No thanks to you. He turned to Angela Merkel. Did you know your husband tried to help me before he died? He was going to expose. That's enough. Laura's voice cracked like a whip. But Angela stepped forward, her polite smile gone. Her voice edged with something much sharper. No, Laura. Let him speak. She folded her arms. I'd love to hear what my husband was planning to expose before his convenient accident. The whispers in the room grew louder. I watched as Laura's carefully built world started to fall apart, piece by piece. I should have felt victorious. But then I saw Jack's face. His expression wasn't anger. It wasn't shock. It was betrayal. Jessica, he said quietly, his voice filled with something I couldn't quite name. What have you done? Before I could respond, Laura played her final card. If we're sharing family secrets, she announced, her voice dangerously calm, maybe we should talk about the real reason Jessica is so interested in our family affairs. She pulled out an envelope, the same kind I had given Tyler, the one filled with Adam's letters. My stomach dropped. What is she talking about? Jack asked, his eyes narrowing. Laura's smile turned sharp, like a knife. Did you really think you were the first person to try bringing me down with the truth, Jessica? She tilted her head, enjoying the moment. Ask your mother about the summer she spent working for Peter Merkel. Ask her why she suddenly left Kemburn 30 years ago. The room swayed. 30 years ago. 1 year before I was born. Laura, Adam warned, his voice tight. But she was already going in for the kill. Your sweet small-town parents have their own secrets, dear. Your father, Walter, isn't... Stop. The words shot out of me like a bullet. I hadn't even realized I'd spoken until every head turned my way. For a brief second, I saw myself reflected in Laura's eyes. The same controlled fury. The same ruthless need to win, no matter the cost. I had spent so much time digging up her secrets that I never considered what the truth might destroy in my own life. Tyler stepped forward, putting himself between us. Enough, Mother. You've lost. Laura let out a small laugh, scanning the room filled with Kemburn's elite, her loyal audience, now whispering and feeding off every word. Lost, she repeated. Or have I just proven exactly who you're dealing with? A girl playing at revenge, without understanding the real cost. Her words hit harder than I expected. I had come here to expose her lies. Instead, I had uncovered a truth I never saw coming. Jack touched my arm. His face was unreadable. We need to talk. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Yes, I said. Finally, I understood what Adam had tried to warn me about. The storm I had created was about to break. But now I wasn't sure who would still be standing when it was over. Laura had been exposed, but her final move had ensured that if she went down, she'd take me with her. The truth hit like shattered glass, each piece reflecting a different lie. I sat across from my parents in our living room, their faces familiar, but suddenly different. Jack stood by the window, keeping as much distance as the small space would allow. My mother twisted her hands in her lap. "We were going to tell you," she said quietly. "When the time was right." 30 years wasn't enough time? My voice didn't sound like my own. And my father, Walter, the man who taught me to ride a bike, to build birdhouses, who had walked me down the aisle, looked at me with eyes full of love and fear. "Jessica," he said softly, "you are my daughter. Biology doesn't change that."
No.
"No," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Laura's revelation at the gala changed everything.
The doorbell rang.
Jack answered it, letting in Adam and Tyler. Laura swept in behind them, uninvited, but unavoidable, like a storm cloud rolling in with the wind. "Well," she said, glancing around at the wreckage of my family, "shall we finally discuss Peter Merkel's?" "Laura," my mother started, her voice shaking. But Laura cut her off. "Tell them, Deborah. Tell them how you worked as Peter's assistant that summer. How you fell in love with him. How you disappeared when his wife found out, carrying a secret that would ruin multiple families." I stood up, my legs weak beneath me. "Stop." Laura's eyes gleamed. "But isn't this what you wanted?" Her voice dripped with fake concern. "The truth? No matter the cost." She let the words hang in the air before delivering the final blow. "Peter Merkel was your father, Jessica. The man whose death you tried to use against me was your biological father." Jack made a strangled sound, like he'd been punched. The weight of her words crashed into the room. I had unknowingly married my half-brother's half-brother. The family I had spent months trying to tear apart was, by blood, partially my own. I turned to Laura, my breath shallow. "You knew. All this time, you knew?" She smiled, slow and deliberate. "Of course I knew. I know everything that threatens my family, including naive little florists with revenge fantasies." "That's enough," Adam said, stepping forward. Laura barely glanced at him. "Is it?" She turned to Jack, her voice smooth as silk. "Your wife planned tonight's humiliation of our family. She worked with Tyler. She turned you against me, all while hiding her own connection to the Merkel scandal." "I didn't know," I whispered. But even to me, the words sounded empty. Laura kept going. "The board members who watched tonight's disaster are already questioning your judgment, Jack. Your company stock will show it tomorrow. Everything you've built, everything your father and I sacrificed for, tainted by association." Jack wouldn't look at me. The space between us felt endless. "Jessica." My mother reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't." The room was spinning. I can't." I turned and ran. I fled to the garden, the only place that still made sense. The flowers I had planted, the earth I had shaped with my own hands. It was the one thing Laura hadn't touched. But even here, her shadow followed. "You understand now, don't you?" I turned to find her standing there, calm as ever. "How truth is just another weapon," she said softly. "And weapons don't care who they hurt." For the first time, I really saw her. "Did you kill him?" I asked. "Peter Merkel. Did you have him killed?" Laura tilted her head slightly. "Does it matter?" I swallowed hard. "The man you tried to avenge," she continued, "was just as flawed as the woman you tried to destroy." She took a step closer. "We're more alike than you think, Jessica. Both willing to burn everything down for what we believe is right. I'm nothing like you." Laura gave a small, knowing smile. "No." She gestured toward the house. "Look at what your quest for justice has cost you. Your marriage, your family, your entire identity." She leaned in just slightly. "Just like I sacrificed everything to protect mine, what I built." The worst part was she was right. I had been so focused on exposing Laura's lies that I hadn't stopped to think about the cost. Jack's company, Tyler's recovery, my parents' marriage. I had risked everything for revenge. Laura turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "There's still a way to fix this." I looked at her, unsure if I wanted to hear what she had to say. "Sign the papers my lawyers prepared," she continued. "Agree to a quiet divorce. Take the settlement. Go back to your little town. Let your husband and his company recover from this scandal." I lifted my chin. "And if I don't?" Her smile was cold. "Then I'll make sure the full story comes out. Every detail about Peter Merkel, your mother's affair, the truth about your marriage." Her voice dropped lower, but the threat was razor sharp. "I'll burn down everything you love, just like you tried to burn down everything I built." She walked away, leaving me standing there among the flowers that no longer felt like home. Through the window, I saw Jack talking to his lawyer, my mother crying in my father's arms, Tyler watching it all, his eyes filled with ghosts. I had set out to reveal who Laura really was. Instead, I had become her. The night air carried the scent of roses, the same flowers I had arranged for my wedding, back when I believed love was stronger than revenge. I had never been more wrong. Angela Merkel's private study felt like a tomb, filled with ghosts of secrets buried long ago. She placed a leather-bound journal on the desk between us, her hand steady despite what we were about to do. "Peter kept records of everything," she said, "including the real reason Laura rose to power." Laura sat across from us, her lawyer hovering nervously at her side. Jack and Tyler stood by the doorway. Adam stood behind his ex-wife's chair, a silent reminder of everything she had already lost. Laura's lawyer cleared his throat. "This is harassment." She silenced him with a wave of her hand. "Let them play their final card," she said smoothly. Then, her gaze locked onto mine. "Though I wonder, Jessica, are you prepared for what this means for your mother?" I thought of my mother at home, my father, Walter, the man who had chosen to love me, even after knowing the truth. I met Laura's eyes. "This isn't about my mother anymore." Angela opened the journal.
Peter discovered something, she said.
Irregularities in the company finances. Money being funneled through shell corporations. All leading back to one person. Laura's expression didn't change, but I heard the shift in her voice. "Careful," she warned. "You're treading dangerous ground." Angela didn't stop. The night before his accident, Peter called Adam. He had evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and something far worse. Laura laughed, but there was no real humor in it. "And you waited all these years to bring this up?" Angela met her gaze, without blinking. "I waited," she said, "until someone was brave enough to stand up to you." She glanced at me. "Or stupid enough." I swallowed hard. "Show them." I spoke softly. "Show me." Angela turned the journal around. Laura's face went pale as she recognized her own signature on documents dated 26 years ago. Adam's voice was steady. "You didn't just steal from the company, Laura. You arranged Peter's accident because he found out the truth about your connection to Tyler's father's death." The room went silent. Tyler took a shaky step forward.
"What?"
Adam looked at him. "Your father threatened to expose Laura's early fraud. His accident wasn't an accident, just like Peter Merkel's wasn't." Laura shot up from her chair, so fast it toppled over. "You can't prove any of this." Angela didn't flinch. "The police reopened both cases this morning. Peter's journal has enough proof for a full investigation." Laura turned to me, her eyes full of rage. "You're destroying this family. Everything I built." Tyler's voice cut through the tension. "You built it on corpses. My father, Peter Merkel, my life, when you had me committed just to hide your guilt." Laura's hands clenched into fists. "I built it for him." She pointed at Jack, her perfect mask cracking. "Everything I did was for his future. The company, the power, the name, all of it. So he'd never have to know what it's like to be powerless." Jack stepped forward, his voice quiet but firm. "And what about Tyler? What about Jessica's father? Were their lives worth my success?" Laura's breath caught. Then, so softly it was barely a whisper, "Yes." The word echoed through the room. And in that moment, something in her shattered. "A mother protects her child," she said, her voice almost desperate. "No matter the cost." I stood.
"No, Laura."
"A mother loves her child. There's a difference." I swallowed hard. My father, Peter, died trying to expose the truth. And the man who raised me? He lived that truth every single day, loving me, even knowing I wasn't his. I turned to Jack. You didn't protect him. You taught him that power matters more than people. Laura reached for her son, but Jack stepped back. The board meeting tomorrow, he said, his voice unwavering. I'm announcing a full audit and working with the police. You'll lose everything. Laura's lips parted in disbelief. No, Mother, Jack continued. I'll lose what you built on lies, but I'll keep what actually matters. His eyes met mine across the room. And for the first time since the gala, I saw my husband, not just Laura's son. Adam exhaled. It's over, Laura. His voice was almost gentle. The truth always comes out eventually. Laura looked around the room. At Tyler's pain. At Jack's quiet strength. At Angela's quiet victory. And something in her shifted. Her mask didn't just crack. It completely broke. And for the first time, I didn't see a monster. I saw a broken woman. Someone who had lost her way a long time ago. Laura exhaled, her voice almost a whisper. Do you want to know the truth, Jessica? She met my eyes, and for the first time, there was no hatred. No calculation. I saw myself in you. The same fire. The same determination to protect what you love. And it terrified me. She turned to Angela. I'll confess to everything, but not for your justice. Not for your revenge. Her eyes moved to Jack, then to Tyler. For my sons, both of them. As the lawyer led Laura away to meet the waiting detectives, I stood there, watching her go. I had won, but I wasn't sure if anyone had really won at all. I felt no victory, only the quiet understanding of how easily the fight for justice could turn into a hunger for power. How revenge, no matter how justified, could twist even the best intentions. Jack reached for my hand. We have our own truth to face. Yes, I said, thinking of all the broken pieces we now had to either mend or leave behind. We do. The war was over. But the real work, healing, was only just beginning. The prison visiting room smelled like disinfectant and regret. Laura sat across from me. Her designer clothes had been replaced with standard issue gray, but her posture was as straight as ever. Jack's company survived the audit, I said, resting my hands on the cold metal table. He's rebuilding it. The right way this time. She gave a small nod. And Tyler's? 7 months sober. He and Jack have dinner together every week. I hesitated. They both asked about you. Something flickered across her face. Pain. Pride. Maybe both. And you, she asked. Why are you here? I pulled out a small photo and slid it across the table. Laura's hands trembled slightly as she picked it up. It's my flower shop, I explained. I'm expanding into the old Merkel building. Angela thought Peter would have wanted that. The photo showed the new storefront, its windows filled with floral arrangements. The sign above the door read, Second Chances Floristry. Laura traced the edge of the picture with her fingers. Fitting, she murmured. Though I doubt I was meant to be one of those second chances. No, I admitted. But understanding you might help me avoid becoming you. Her eyes snapped up, sharp as ever. And have you? I thought about the past year, about revenge disguised as justice, about how easy it was to justify cruelty in the name of righteousness. I understand now, I said. That protecting something doesn't mean destroying everything else. Laura sighed, looking down at the photo again. You know, I truly believed I was doing the right thing. Every lie, every choice, I told myself it was all for a greater purpose. Until the purpose became the lies. She set the picture down carefully. And now, I asked. Her voice was quiet. Now I sit here, counting the cinder blocks, wondering, when was the exact moment? The moment protection turned into poison. A guard signaled that our time was almost up. I stood, but her voice stopped me. Jessica, I turned. That night at your wedding, I saw myself in you. Not just the determination or the strength, but the potential to become me. She exhaled. That's why I tried to break you. I met her eyes. I know. That's why I had to break you back. For the first time, Laura smiled. Not smug, not cruel. Just sad. And real. We could have been magnificent allies. Her gaze softened. We could have been family. The word hung between us, heavy with everything that could have been and everything that never would be. She straightened her prison-issued jacket, a ghost of her old dignity lingering in the gesture. "Tell my sons," she hesitated, then shook her head.
No.
"I've lost the right to send messages. They'll find their own truth now." Outside, Jack waited by the car. He didn't ask about the visit. And I didn't ask about his weekly phone calls to the prison, the ones he thought I didn't know about. Some wounds heal in silence. Some truths don't need to be spoken. At home, the roses were still blooming. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself breathe. I found Kathleen arranging flowers in the kitchen. "Your parents are in the garden," she said. "Walter's building that new trellis." Through the window, I watched as my father, because that's what he would always be, showed my mother how to secure a climbing rose. Their love had survived the weight of the truth and come out stronger. Some foundations, I had learned, were built on more than just blood. The doorbell rang. Tyler stood on the porch, holding up a small chip that gleamed in the light. "7 months sober," he said. "Thought you might want to see this." "Because I helped with your recoveries?" I asked. "Or because I helped bring down your mother's?" He shrugged.
Both.
"Neither. Maybe because you showed me there's a difference between justice and revenge." He rolled the chip between his fingers. "Though I'm still figuring out where that line is." "Let me know when you do," I said. "I'm still looking for it myself." That evening, Jack and I walked through the garden. I stopped beside the rose bushes I had planted after Laura's arrest. White petals, streaked with crimson at their centers. Beautiful, complicated things that had thrived in the aftermath of destruction. Jack touched a petal. "Sometimes I wonder," he murmured, "if we're just echoes of our parents' choices." I shook my head.
No.
Were the lessons they never learned. He took my hand, and together, we stood among the roses, witnesses to both vengeance and redemption. Somewhere in Kemberton, Angela Merkel was probably reading her husband's journal again. And in a prison cell, Laura was counting her regrets. But here in this garden, I was learning something new. The hardest truth wasn't about revenge or justice. It was about how victory could sometimes feel like loss, how revenge could hollow out the heart that carried it, and how forgiveness, real forgiveness, was the hardest bloom to grow. But I had time, and unlike Laura, I had finally learned the difference between planting something and destroying it.